What's up? How's it going, guys? Nice to see you. Welcome to another edition of Hobby Hangout with me, Danny Samuels, the hobby and terrain specialist. Yay! Today, I'm joined by Tony Konicek, our video producer,
Good
Brian
morning.
McLaughlin, our physical engineer, and Andy Gill, our customer service manager. Say hi, guys.
Good morning.
Technically, I'm not a manager. I don't know.
Well, there we go.
Whatever.
So, welcome. Today, we're going to go over our stream schedule first and a few announcements before we get started making awesome stuff. All right, so as per usual, we do a bunch of live streams. On Wednesdays, we have the Dev Hangout. On Thursdays, we have Get Your Paint On. On sometimes, coming soon, December 17th, we have Staff Showdown. And December 13th, we have another Hobby Hangout. Super exciting. I have something pretty cool planned for that one.
It's my personal favorite.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. All right, up next, we're going to go over subscriptions. Please subscribe. If we get more subscribers, we unlock some really cool emotes. When we get up to 120 subscribers, you will unlock the Riot Quest loot coin. This is super exciting. Also, be sure, if you have your Amazon Prime subscription, you get a free sub with your Amazon Prime account, and please be sure to renew that with us if you have not already. If you subscribe today, you also get these super cool holiday emotes. Check these out. They're super fun. I really love that cat at the top. Super cute.
Yeah, subscribe between now and the end of the year, and then you'll get those emotes from Twitch.
They're super awesome.
I love the sweaty snowman.
Also, super important, today is the last day for our Black Friday sale. It's super amazing. The more money you spend, the more money you save. We have super awesome mystery boxes still available. For $60, you get at least $250 in War Machine and Hordes minis and $50 of miscellaneous products. It is a ton of stuff and a really fun surprise to open up because you don't know what you're going to get. It's super, super cool. There you can see the details, and this is, I believe, the last day to purchase that.
Yeah, today's the last day for both Black Friday and the mystery box.
So get yours while you can. Up next, we have a brand new mini crate that just is launching today. This is Shinjo Altan Sarnai.
That was wow. That was nice, Danny. You nailed the name.
That was so hard.
That was excellent.
Practicing it a lot.
So much practice. So that launches today. I actually really, really love the Legend of the Five Rings mini crates. I'm getting all of them. They're so well sculpted. They're some of my favorite things to paint.
Yeah, actually the Tengu Sensei, which is the other one.
Yeah, the VIP one.
Yeah, that one looks amazing. Like we got the physical sculpt and we're doing work on it, and it is gorgeous.
All of them look so good.
I want that one.
Honestly, the Tengu Sensei is my favorite of the line, I think.
Also, so we still have all of our regular mini crate going, but the Shinjo Altan Sarnai launched today, so be sure to register for that. Also, I would like to say that Brian and I are now opening up our emails for you guys to answer any hobby questions you guys might have. As you can see, our emails are available. We both have pretty busy schedules, but we would love to hear your ideas, and we'll get back to you. Just be patient with some of the responses. But no, we would love your ideas. We would love to see what you guys, or hear what you guys would like to see on live stream. Let's get involved with the community here.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions, if there's something burning that you want to find out about, how to do, figure out, shoot us an email. We would love to answer that for you.
Also, be sure to use the hashtag on Instagram, hashtag P3kitbashers. Tony, do you want to show one of the awesome things that we have?
No, let's save it for later.
Awesome, I love it.
We'll do it later on in the show.
We've been getting some pretty cool response to the hashtag, so we want to show some of that a little later. So, today, now that we're done with announcements, I'm going to go over something that I get asked a lot about, which is how to make ponds and acid pools and do water effects. So like, how do we paint for this? How do we show depth? What do we use to make a durable, clear water effect that you'll be able to like put your minis on that won't dent up over time or yellow? So we're going to go over that today. Please be sure to ask questions on the chat. As you can see, we have uploaded some of our really nice resin ponds that we've made for our tournaments on the web store. We only have 30 of these sets available. So for $15, you get 2 ponds, 2 resin ponds. They're random. They'll be really cool. Go ahead. You can
That
see the link
means,
there.
if you want them, order them today. Get on with your Black Friday and grab some ponds
We're
while
only selling
they're
30
still
sets.
here.
Yeah.
Actually, you should probably even do it this morning, like right now while we're in the stream. They're going to sell out quick.
Yep.
Oh, you got those up on the store already?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
there.
they are up on the store. They are live. They are ready to go. Just please buy them.
All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to paint, right? Something that's really important with our terrain in general is, well, I shouldn't say super important. We have a recipe that we use for our bases, right? We have a paint recipe for how we paint them so that our stuff kind of blends in to a lot of our environments, so to speak. When we're photographing miniatures on our terrain, we don't want the bases to stand out too much because as the photographer also, I have to like Photoshop the bases out, and that's a pain in the butt if the like grass and turf on the base doesn't match our terrain. So that recipe is actually umbral umber, followed by a dry brush of rucksack tan, followed by a dry brush of Manoth white base. Oh my god, it's been a long week. So as you can see here, I primed it black. I'm just slapping some umbral umber on here. And I also took some, what's it called? Some like ruddy brown, some like rusty brown primer, because I've got these metal bits here, as you can see. Tony, can you move the little screen over a little bit? I can't really see what's. Yeah, thank you, buddy. So you can see I've got these kind of rusty bits, so I pre-primed that with kind of a rusty primer just to save me a little bit of time.
Did you spray prime those, or did you?
I did. A lot of the time, if I'm not using, so one of the nice things about resin terrain is if I'm not using like, well, it's not foam, right?
Yeah.
So spray paint, unless it's a very particular type of spray paint, melts foam. And so I can't really use rattle cans.
Some of us have learned that the hard way.
I think anybody who's tried it has. Yep.
Did I tell you my
And super
story
glue.
about this? Did we go over this?
No, I don't think so.
13-year-old Danny's first piece of terrain.
Yeah.
So I discovered terrain when I was very young and poor, and I didn't have enough money to get the miniatures that I wanted, right? And so what I do is I realized I was pretty decent at a young age at making terrain. I just loved doing it. Mm-hmm. And so I would build terrain and I would trade it to the game stores to get product.
Oh, nice.
Now, little Danny, 13-year-old Danny, spent all this time. So I love goblins because I'm basically like a goblin at this point. Like I'm just like this small little thing, 13 years old, that likes to blow stuff up and make things. So I wanted to make this sweet goblin cave, right? And I spent all this time. I've spent all this time carving this thing out of foam, and I like tunneled it out and everything, which I totally didn't need to do because you're never going to see inside of it. And then I'm like, this is awesome. I'm ready to paint. I'm super proud of this thing. It has like a wood door, and then I spray it with black spray paint.
Oh no.
13-year-old Danny cried.
And it just
Like,
melts
it
away.
just
Melting.
melted into a lump.
Yep.
And I spent so long like carving this thing. I was so proud of it, and then it just turned into like foam wad.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yep.
So one of the nice things about resin terrain, sorry, I get a little distracted. What a surprise. It's really fun for Tony to wrangle me on my stream. Like, the face he gave me at the start was absolutely amazing. So the awesome thing about resin terrain is I can get away with rattle cans a lot, and I swear by it. That's something from my background in film that we do a lot of our front end work by using spray paint.
Yeah.
Right, it's just so much faster for me.
Yeah.
So I'll model in a base coat with spray paint if I can.
Dan Games, you guys ever go to seal something and realize it was primer? That was actually something I was thinking about. I was doing a building where I used like, the little plastic see-through thing on envelopes to, I did that for windows just to represent glass.
Yeah.
And then I went to go seal it, and sure enough, it was primer, and just like, there goes my window, and it's like, oh. Great.
Oh my God, that's the worst. You know what's one of my worst fears? Is so we use a dull coat. We use a certain type of dull coat, but that brand makes spray paints.
Yep.
And are they in the same size?
They're the same
can?
size,
Oh.
and that spray paint is actually one of the few spray paints that doesn't melt foam. So I use it a lot for my terrain. And one of my greatest fears is, and I write in big letters
Yep.
on
Yeah.
them
Yeah,
next
yeah,
to it. But one of my greatest fears is Jordan's going to finish a mini, and he's going to reach for the dull coat and spray it with like gray.
See,
Yeah.
like I'm the kind of person where if I had that spray booth, like our spray booth is used by multiple people in the building, so it's a little harder to control.
three
But I would
different
literally have a left hand, right hand side. Like the
Yeah.
right hand is this type of paint, and no can that is not that type of paint goes back into it just to help with.
See, I
with
try.
remembering.
I'm awesome. Thank you, S.
Epic
Kawajiri.
Duck.
Forgive me if I pronounced that wrong. Thank you for the follow. That's awesome.
And also for Epic Duck is rating us right now. Yay!
What?
Whoa!
We're still kind of setting up, but I have that spray booth, so normally stuff that shouldn't be out there, I keep in the flammable cabinet, but that's buried right now, as we're still kind of moving in a little bit.
Yeah.
I have nightmares about it.
Yeah,
So-
I've got like 6 or 7 different primers for my stuff at home, and it's just double, triple, quadruple check. It's like, is this the same one? And then just do a quick little test spray on some other piece of cardboard. It's like, okay, that's the right one.
Right.
I learned my lesson.
I keep my rattle cans above my industrial sink in my laundry room, and when I opened the cabinet the other day, one came tumbling out without a cap on, and then it hit the edge of the sink and then fell to the floor, and when it hit the edge of the sink, it jammed the nozzle in.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was just
Oh
a
no!
can of spray paint
Spraying.
just ejecting paint into the air.
Throw it like a grenade out the door.
Yeah, out the door.
You know, when I was in high school, and this should surprise no one that I did this, and actually this is a good stage for me to do the green ad. This is actually going to be, before I get distracted by my terrible prank that I played in high school, I'm going to show you guys how to add depth and fake depth with your paint. Actually, first I'm going to tell you this prank. You ever do that thing where you take the Axe can? So where I went to school, they had like a music room, and I took an Axe can and I put a chair on it and just closed the door.
No.
That was awful.
Yeah.
Anyway, don't do that. Something important when you're doing water effects, dependent on the type of water that you're doing. And this technique, you can create, and Brian and I are going to like chat about that in a little bit here. You can create like any type of water liquid with the technique I'm going to show you guys. You can make blood pools. You can make oil spills. This is super, super versatile. It's a super versatile technique. But the way that you fake depth is actually through your paint. So if it's going to be a deep pond, you want to fade the middle to a very dark color. And then as it gets to that edge, you're going to gradient it out to a lighter color to signify, the deeper water is always darker, right? So as it gets to that shoreline, you're going to see a lighter color, and that's kind of how you fake it. So I like to do that when the paint is super wet. Now, for this demo today, I'm going to do an acid pool. So we're going to go in with some greens. I've got necrotite green, which is one of my favorite colors. It's so obnoxious. Gnarls green and iosin, and probably we're going to throw a little bit of Ortic olive. Not really sure about that yet because I think it's going to blend into the brown that's already still wet there. Need to make sure I let this dry.
And Dan, I just wanted to call out that pool that you have in front of you, those gears and detritus that's all on the bottom, that's all sculpted into the pond, right?
It is.
That's not
Yep.
stuff that you added.
Comes like that. No, that's the resin kit, man. And that's one of the cool things I actually brought. Let's see, they still in my pocket? Yeah, nice. Something else you can do with these resin kits is like, you can find some little logs or something from outside, little branches that I've cut. You can always kind of glue these down. This is a little bark chunk that we could paint to look like a rock. So you can modify these very easily by placing random objects into them and get a lot of variance.
Yeah,
out
I
of
took
it.
like extra minis just from minimum units or things that I was just extra bits from whatever, and then just cut them in half and then just lay them on the terrain or pool or whatever, and it looks like they're just stuck in it.
Exactly, exactly. And you can see that we, when we made the master for the resin cast, we buried a lot of this stuff in the sand, so it kind of blends in. And I'm going to have it poke through the acid pool a little bit. So anyway, we're going to start with whatever this is, Gnarls Green here, and I'm just going to shove that in here. We're just going to work it on in. We're going to let it blend with that brown so it gets really nice and dark.
And yes, he is, Striker. I'm just waiting for it.
What's that?
Oh, Striker 911 is pointing out that you're wearing a white hoodie while painting.
Oh, it's my working hoodie. It's not white anymore. It just has the appearance of it, but it is a mess.
Oh, that's actually just like white paint all over it.
No, it's just a mess now. It's got like blotches of paint all over. It's my college hoodie. Have to represent, right? So you can see I'm blending out as I get more brown on my brush from the base coat. I'm blending it out.
So I actually got a closer look at those earlier when you were bringing them in just to show them off to me. The texture on there is super, super deep. Are you really worrying about like getting the paint right down in there, or are you just kind of like
Well, that's why
dealing with it?
I'm keeping the paint kind of wet.
Okay.
Right, which is going to be obnoxious on this live stream because I got to let it dry. No, if you keep the paint a little bit more wet, if you water it down just a tiny bit, it'll just seep in there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have like weird blotches that aren't covered. Here's an example of what this will look like as a regular water feature. You can see the deeper area to create that depth. It fades out to that kind of ground color towards the end.
And how
right?
thick, like how tall is it from like a complete side profile of it just to... Okay, so that's like...
so not very.
That's like super thin.
It's over a quarter of an inch, probably 3/8. And then here's kind of what we're gonna make today, right?
And these are one-piece casts.
One piece cast, and the casting quality is gonna vary just a little bit because these are just flat pours that we did for our tournaments. So you're gonna get a little bit of if it does bow a little bit, guys, it's super easy. You just hit it with like a heat gun or a
Hair dryer.
A hair dryer. I think we have a video about it. And it'll just flatten right back out. That's the other nice thing about resin terrain. It's very, very forgiving.
Yeah, it is.
So we're gonna go in with Necrotite. We're just gonna mash a bunch of this in here and make it look all glippy and gloppy and nasty, right?
The perfectionist in me just makes it like cringe with the just slopping the paint on like that.
I mean, this is kind of how
This is definitely Danny's style.
just
Just the going for it.
yeah. You guys were talking about sealants. I feel bad. I never seal my models.
You should.
I'm always afraid that the sealant is gonna just change the color or put like a weird kind of film over it.
Right.
It's just
Yeah, it just randomly frosts
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yep. Had that happen.
I've had that happen on a couple models before, and then like I'm just too scared now. Granted, I'm not a good enough painter that it matters, but
Let's see. All right. Let's see if this is dry enough to do a dry brush coat. Not quite there yet.
Alec Luda is asking you, Danny, if there's any chance of making some beautiful firewalls in the future.
Fire what?
Firewalls.
Firewalls.
I'm
Well,
guessing walls of fire.
for like spell effect templates.
Yeah, or terrain.
we do have the burning earth.
Yeah, the burning earth markers.
marker, and we sell those at conventions exclusively. So keep an eye out for those if you come to our conventions. We normally have some of those. Brian's actually the one that has to cast them.
Yeah, I've made so many of those.
Yeah, so we do have those. But no, that's definitely something I can think about doing. Fire is actually like weirdly hard to sculpt.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, I play Fiora 1 an awful lot myself. And that firewall template, it's always really tricky with that wall template because unlike the rock wall template where models don't really stop on top of it, the firewall models, can go through it, stand on it or whatever. So it's really hard with a temporary terrain effect like that, or a spell effect rather.
Yeah.
How do you make something 3D that models can also stand on without like screwing up their placement or something like that.
Right. And that's like, I mean, that's something we have to do a lot for like tournament stuff is we make, templates that the terrain goes on, right? So like for trees, we have like a forest base and then the trees are removable. So once you go into that forest, it would be a similar kind of thing.
I think that's one of the smartest gameplay ideas I've ever seen.
It was a really good solution for sure.
Because like for years growing up, playing miniature games, it would be just the forest is molded. We have the trees on there.
Don't stand on the
don't
giant
stand
tree.
on it. Just pretend your guys are in there.
Yep.
And then someone was like, "Oh, why don't we just put the trees on bases?"
So just doing a quick dry brush here, just for the sake of time, because this is taking a while to dry. I mixed in Menoth White base with a bit of rucksack tan, just to kind of give it this nice mid-tone, and I dry brushed the dirt around it. I'm going to bring some of this back out here, fade it towards the ground color, just kind of feather out that edge with a clean brush. Let's see.
So one of my favorite things about painting terrain is kind of what you're doing here, Danny, which is that you can just kind of go a little more, I don't want to say crazy, but just loose. You can be a lot more loose with how you're painting. Like it just, it doesn't have to be super precise everywhere all the time.
No, and that's one of the really fun parts, Tony, is you get to pick and choose where you want. Something that's really important with terrain is picking and choosing where you want your viewer to focus, because you don't want to take attention away from the miniatures, right? That is what we are as a company. We are a miniature company, so you want to build awesome terrain that complements them but doesn't distract from the awesome game that's happening. The nice thing about terrain is you get to figure out like where you want to add focus. So like, am I going to paint something a little bit more detailed here versus really sloppy over here to kind of add some focus to the more detailed area. There's a lot of really fun decision making. So Andres Karpinski, you're wondering if the master copy should be made from like a plaster or something before casting. It's just a straight up, like we just cast right over the sand. You just seal it with a bunch of wood glue, so that the silicone doesn't, like when we cast it, the silicone wouldn't seep in
And pick up all the sand and such.
Yeah, I think what he had an earlier question where he was talking about how you made the base edge rim.
Yeah.
And we were all saying that this is cast as one piece, but I think he actually wants to know how it was sculpted prior to it being cast. Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a bunch of different ways. I've done it a bunch of. I didn't make these ones. I think it was actually Stu, way back in the day. But you can use wood filler, like the main shape might have been cut out of like MDF or masonite, right? And then you build up a rim of wood filler with with a spatula. Stu Spangler, brother Chaplain Cage. You build it up, with your putty knife, and then I just take a wet brush and smooth it out, and then I build up sand over it. Another easy method is just using an epoxy sculpt, like an epoxy putty. You can kind of build up a rim, and then we just pour sand all over it.
Yeah, like I've used grout and stuff like that, just mixed up to a really thick ratio, so it's super thick, and then just using the putty knife to create like a little dam to keep all the eventual resin inside of it.
Exactly.
I've had luck kind of using the drywall repair spackle.
Yeah, spackle.
Yeah.
It's the same thing as like a wood filler, basically.
Yeah.
Same trick. So I'm just kind of going in and scrubbing in some metallic on this edging here a little bit.
And you're just kind of dry brushing that on?
Yeah, just more like scumbling, like I'm just kind of jamming it, to get some blotching, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If that makes sense. Because we've got this nice rusty base, so it doesn't really I want to let that show through, right?
Yeah.
The thing I like about this sculpt for the acid pool specifically is that it shows this machine that's like slowly dissolving, and you can add all those extra bits to it to make it into whatever you want, right?
Yeah,
like
you
you can
can-
grab like some random like leftover jack arms or whatever, and kind of tell more of a story with your terrain. Like, here's where, I don't know, Juggernaut was killed and it's slowly dissolving or something.
Right.
No, that's actually one of my favorite things. Like I loved when I was playing before working at Privateer here at a local game store. I loved setting up the tables before anybody got there, and like. No, I don't think anybody really realized it, but I would always have like a little story going on with
Nice.
the table setup where it was like, clearly this is like some sort of a small village, town square kind of a thing, or a fight around a cemetery or something like that, where it wasn't just like generic field. But I'm also known for going a lot heavier on terrain than some people would prefer.
Yeah,
Right,
Much
yeah.
to my
Well,
players' chagrin.
We were. I'm in the Office campaign. We're playing an Office campaign.
Yep.
I think we did a insider about it, so you guys should know that we're all playing. I was playing a game yesterday, and we were talking about how the terrain placement in the game has changed over the years, and how now according to our designers, the optimal terrain placement is you kind of have more stuff towards the center of the board. Before I started working here, when I was playing more heavily, it was like you would have this kind of no man's land in the center of the board, or with one or two big chunks, and then the sides of the boards spread out would have these just dense terrain all over. And it just feels very different when you do it opposite, you know?
Oh yeah, and like my perspective on that is like terrain that's out on the outer 6 inches of the board.
Oh, sure.
It's there just for show more than anything. It's not actually something to interact with.
I think it's there to like save your dudes during deployment. Like if I have a bunch of Doom Reavers, like if they get shot, they're just gonna die. Like
Mazamune loves terrain and lots of it, but
Yeah.
prefers smaller game formats. I actually really love the really large formats. Like, if anybody has ever met me a few years back when I was really heavily going to lock and load and such, I loved the Unbound format where it was
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
massive games and like, we're going through this choke point because the terrain's super choked up, but I got to make that choice.
We got to do it. Yeah. I think it. Yeah.
Well, and I'm super excited for, we've got some stuff coming up in the future that's going to use a lot more terrain. And I'm really pumped about it. Like, Wilson's talked a little bit about it on, I think, Primecast, but we've got some really, really cool stuff that I am jazzed about that's going to be terrain heavy. And just stay tuned, guys. It's going to be a blast. Man, yeah, I'm doing some fun stuff for Lock and Load. Drakios, Dragoon. Like, I've got some really fun stuff planned for you. Since we moved a lot of our bigger tables, I'm refurbing or literally cutting in half and modifying to turn into new tables very quickly. I've got a sweet Extreme Colossal Wrestling board coming your way.
Oh.
So stay tuned for
that'll be
that.
fun.
I love Lock and Load because we can just bring everything. So I'm going to set this aside for a second because it needs to dry before I can really go in and do some water effects. But you can see I just, the rust is very forgiving. I just slammed in a bunch of like bloodstone, kind of got it wet and smeared it around. And, it glazes over the metallic, so it gets this kind of rusty, nasty crust. I modeled in some of that necrotite green, just kind of stamped it in there. So that it gets this gross kind of look. I know I said push it darker towards the middle, but I decided to make it, for this acid pool to really just have it glowing green. So I just wanted to create an interesting texture for this to complement the to complement the goo that we're going to put in it.
It'll almost look like it's bubbling under the surface.
Yeah, so we're going to put this. We're going to put this to the side. Andy, could you hand me that thing behind you? So we're going to talk about some different ways that you can use water effects. This is actually a big blood pool.
Hey, Danny, hold that up in front of the camera in front of you, and we show it up this way so they can see.
In front
like,
of me?
there you go.
Oh, sweet. Perfect. Here's a big blood pool, and it's actually... angle. So everything's backwards. It's actually done using the exact same technique that we're doing here. Right? We just faded it to a dark, sanguine base mixed with umbral umber and kind of wet blended it down. And I have a vacuum former here, so I vacuum formed these clear domes, and then I just airbrushed the backside of them with our red ink and glued them down with hot glue, and then poured the water effects into it, which you can tint with our ink. So we'll get to that. But you can make blood. You can do the same technique with
Googly eyes.
Googly eyes, yeah.
yep.
So I know we swear by my hand on the back.
You guys love googly eyes.
Dude, I
They're
use
so
googly
good.
eyes for everything.
Or-
It's just going to become a running joke here.
Or just as a prank, somebody
Right.
just put googly eyes.
so you can
googly eyes
snap
on
the
their stuff.
backside off of a googly eye and just paint the clear part.
One day I'm going to get around to doing this, where I'm going to take one of the Legion heavy war beasts, and I'm going to carve out those the things where the eyes look like they would go, and I'm going to put googly eyes in those things.
Right.
One day I'm going to do it.
And Jeff, the thing with Jeff is saying, hi Jeff, welcome. He's saying you can use ping pong balls, and you can.
Yep.
But the problem with that is you have to paint them, so it kind of hurts the illusion. I like using a clear dome, so I get a capuchin from the craft store. Those are clear, and I paint the backside.
Oh, you know what you could also do.
So I spray the
is-
backside. That's why using a googly eye, the clear part from a googly eye is really useful, because
Yeah.
you just prime the backside black if it's going to be an oil pit with a bubble. So it gives it that clear effect. You just dust it with paint, right?
You could also use those things from the, like when you go to a restaurant or whatever, you put in 50 cents, you get the little collectible
Yeah.
dude.
Oh, the
Those are-
gachapon machines.
Yeah.
So those are good, but the only problem
probably
with them
way
is
too
they
big.
have a mold line at the top. They have a big
right.
divot.
Divot.
Okay, yeah, never mind.
Yeah, so those are really, they kind of defeat the illusion a lot.
Disregard my idea then.
Another thing that works really well is your Tylenol capsule. The plastic part that your pill comes in, not the actual capsule, but the wrapper.
Yeah,
How you peel the foil backing.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, so those are absolutely fantastic bubbles. I just, like NyQuil or whatever has an actual round one. I save those.
the ones that dissolve in your
No.
stomach one? Or
No.
What
No.
do you?
When you buy NyQuil or whatever, it comes in a
Oh, the
sheet.
little
The
blister pack
double
thing.
blister.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you
okay.
peel the tin foil off, but you save that plastic part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you
yeah.
can glue that down and use it as bubbles too.
Little oblong bubbles.
So yeah, it's there's a lot of fun stuff to be had there. I'm about to remake or I hope to get the green light to remake one of our oil Manos Fury boards. It's got this
Oh, I
sweet
love-
oil
Oh.
slick with all this cracking ground and
Oh,
stuff.
that'd be cool.
I just want to
Yeah.
make it a little bit more playable. So it'll be really fun.
Danny, so while that pond is drying, what are you going to prep next? What's the next step?
So the next step, and I should be able to go over this with soon. I ran this paint pretty thick, but I don't think it's going to affect our resin too much.
We get to mix the resin now?
We get to mix the reson.
Yes.
So the next step, and there are a lot of different, and sorry to not be able to show you a ton on screen while this dries, but it's just the way it goes sometimes. There are a lot of different products to do water effects, right? There are some that are just out of the bottle, ready to go, that you can buy at a hobby store, and I tend to not like those. In fact, I hate those. In fact, I only use one water effect, ever, because it's durable. So you can go to a train store and you can get water effects. Now the problem with that is it's
They usually have a little blue tint too, correct?
Kind of, yeah. But I'm not too worried about that because I normally
Oh, okay.
tint. I normally tint my water effects anyway. If it's going to be a dirty pond, I'll put like some brown ink in there or something.
Sure.
But it's water based. Takes a ton of time to dry, and because it's
Oh, okay.
water based, it shrinks, and it'll absorb into your sand. So it's okay if it's a piece of resin terrain; it'll work a little better. But if it's anything with where you actually scratch build it and made it out of sand, those water-based water effects actually really shrink and just go away. They absorb right in. So I actually only use resin. I use an epoxy resin, the stuff for bar tabletoping. So like that clear resin that you see on bars, you can buy it at most craft stores. It's just clear epoxy resin. And it'll normally have actually like on the package most of these types. There are a few different types. They'll actually have like a tabletop on the box, and you can see like them pouring the resin. The nice thing about it is it self-levels, and it's epoxy based, and it's meant for tabletopping, so it doesn't yellow. And it dries super flat, and it's super shiny, and it's durable. And that's what I like about it. A lot of the water-based ones kind of have a gel to them. And they stay a little bit gummy, and you'll dent them really easily when you put your minis on them, or God forbid you roll a dice on it. It'll just chip it right out. But there is something to be said for, and I'll go into what I'm doing in a second. There is something to be said for some of the water-based products. Like there are, what's it called? Like rippling water effects. Where you can, it's like a gum or like a gel medium, and you can actually like add waves with it. So I'll go in and I'll tease up, I'll add some of that over the resin after it's dry and start to tease up some waves or some ripples.
Striker 911 is saying, please don't get resin on any of Tony's equipment. Then cancel Danny will happen for sure. That's actually why he's using the cardboard here, is to specifically protect his stuff. And if you're ever working in resin, do everything you can to try and keep your surfaces clean and safe, because it will destroy the world if it gets a chance.
That's the problem with resin, is there's not, first off, let's talk about safety for a sec, even though I am I play things fast and loose, and I am a little crazy.
Danny's not OSHA approved.
But I also, it's funny that we keep saying that, because I've done so many OSHA classes, and I really do want to talk about safety for a second. Because even though I am crazy, this is important. Resin's not good for you. Wear gloves. Try not to use it in a small enclosed space. Luckily for you, epoxy resin is probably the least toxic on the MSDS form of the types of resins that you will commonly use. So please use it outside or in good ventilation. But just be cautious. The other thing is, don't get it on your hands. Wear gloves, please. And the problem with resin is if you get it on your work surface, there isn't really a good solvent that's not more toxic than the resin to get it off your surface. Like the only real way to dissolve it off is like wipe it down with acetone. So that's why you should always lay down a sacrificial something, be it paper. I'll usually rip open like a grocery store bag and lay it on the table so I can just crumble it up. I can literally fold it so the mess doesn't get anywhere, and I can toss it out. The gloves, it's important. There's a technique actually to pulling off your gloves. You should roll them into each other so they flip inside out, so you don't get resin onto things because it might get on your hands.
It's like how your doctor takes their gloves off.
That's
exactly the same way you want to do it.
And I see Dorian Clampett saying that he had a resin eat through cups and ruin a game mat. That's fairly rare. That's a specific type of resin that will do that. That's a polyester resin that will go through those things. So that's actually and Brother Shepling King is talking about how hot resin can get. And that's also polyester resin. So don't use polyester resin. There's no real need for it unless you're doing fiberglass work, which you're not going to be for terrain. It's really, really toxic, and the kicker that you use is MEKP. If you get that stuff in your eyes, it will actually melt your eyeball out. I hate polyester resin. Don't use it. However, this resin, super, super easy to use. It's definitely the safest of the resins. It's pretty forgiving. So we're gonna actually, this is probably dry enough. It's not dry, but it's gonna do some weird stuff.
We
but
have tangented enough.
It'll be fine. Sorry, I'm filibustering, man. I'm trying to let this dry. I'm not even tangenting. I'm just trying to give it a little more time to dry. So you can see with this resin, it's got a part A and a part B. Actually, this is part B, part A. Doesn't matter. 1-to-1 ratio. It's not by weight, it's by volume, which means, you measure to the same line, you mix part A with B, and it's going to cure. Now, this stuff takes a long time to cure, which is actually nice because it gives it enough time to self-level out. Mm-hmm. So as long as you leave, it's very important to leave your water effects on a flat surface. Sorry, Dorian Clampett, I don't know why that's happening. Smooth on 300 should absolutely not melt through cups. That is really weird. I'm wondering if was it a foam cup? It might have hot kicked. It might have gotten too hot and actually melted.
I can actually speak to that one. We have used some, and it's the exothermic reaction.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Probably
of the
hot,
resin.
yeah.
In particular, it's usually like the red plastic cups that you find literally everywhere. If you use the clear plastic cups, it is much less likely to eat through your cup or melt it or whatever.
So I like to use these Dixie cups or whatever these are, where it has this bottom line, but it's clear.
Yep.
And I found that with our pond specifically, if I fill up just a little bit over this, I use this line to measure equal parts, but it just so happens that it kind of fills up the pond perfectly when I do one to the line, So I'm going to go in and I'm just going to carefully pour this in, go right up to that line.
Apparently, Stryker works for the company that makes those cups, so
Nice.
we
Sweet.
need to talk about getting the hookup.
Yeah, we do. We use so many. So I also, it's important to shake up your part A and part B before you use it. I'm going ahead and I am pouring them into 2 separate cups. Unfortunately, it can be a little wasteful, but you want to get the measurement right. Humidity can do some weird stuff, and temperature change can do some weird stuff to epoxy resin. Epoxy's kind of just like the putty. Heat will affect it. So if it's in a warmer environment, it's gonna kick off faster.
Is this kind of like with the two-part sculpting epoxy, where you can kind of game it a little bit to be like, I want a little bit more of the blue half instead of the yellow half? Or
I mean, I've
make
messed with it a little
smoother?
bit, but no, you want to go even.
But just keep it as even as possible.
Yeah, it's got a very, you've got a little bit of play, but it is not worth the risk because otherwise you've just ruined your terrain piece.
Oh,
And,
sure.
Yeah.
Right. It's that's the scary thing. That is the scary thing about using resin water effects is if it doesn't cure, your whole piece is ruined. There's literally nothing you can do about it because it's going to be a gloppy mess forever, and it's just going to be a nightmare. Now, the side that is slightly tinted tends to be a little bit more liquidy. Or no, sorry, the side that's more clear. One of the sides is a little bit more clear. One of them is a little bit more amber. It's thinner viscosity, so I use that actually to pour in to the other one because it flows through easier.
Yeah, and always try and use 2 cups and pour one into the other after you've measured out your amounts. Don't try and do it all in 1 cup because that will inevitably be the time that you mess up the ratio and you'll never get it right. And that's when you'll get a miscure on it.
And also,
Unless you're using a measuring spoon. I don't know why you would ruin a measuring spoon.
mix up a little bit more than you need. Also, if you're ever trying to mix a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of resin, it's kind of an odds game, right? Like, you're gonna be off. Like, if it's a tiny, tiny bit of resin, you're inevitably, your measurement's gonna be off. So I'm taking this plastic knife, and I'm making sure I scrape the sidewall to make sure I get all of the residue down on in there. And I'm just gonna mix it all up, mix pretty vigorously. The other nice thing about the fact that this cures slowly is you actually have a lot of time to, take your time and mix it properly. A lot of people will actually mix it and then pour it into a new cup so that you don't accidentally, if I'm mixing a big batch, I'll do that so that I don't accidentally get any residue.
Now,
poured
when
in
you're
there.
mixing that, are you being really careful to are you concerned at all about bubbles being incorporated into it, or
Not
does
yet,
it?
because I have a trick that I'm going to show to get rid of all the bubbles. And the nice thing is, it's a long cure, so a lot of those bubbles are gonna pop out by the end. It looks a little bit foggy right now, but it will dry perfectly clear. It's just one of the really cool things about it.
Stryker is saying that they also make those knives. So
Yeah, we need to talk.
yeah,
about
we really need to talk to you.
We go through a lot of those. So I'm just making sure I mix this really nicely. Another really cool thing about this resin is our inks work extremely well with them to tint them.
Nice.
Even if I'm just doing a pond, I like to tint it with a little bit of ink, and a little goes a long way. Our inks are super, super punchy. They're really, really useful to punch up colors. Like I'll mix them into actual paint to just get the color a little bit more vibrant. So if I'm doing a pond, I'll mix in a little bit of brown ink, a little bit of green ink, just to kind of tint it. But for this, I'm gonna mix in some green ink to make it all nasty and slimy and acidy. So ease up into it, right? Like don't pour a bunch in, mix it.
You can always add one more
You can
drop.
always
You can't
add
take that
another
back
drop.
out.
Yep.
Exactly.
You know, maybe a little bit of turquoise ink.
I'm gonna
would be
throw
good
in
too.
some
yellow.
yellow.
Oh, nice.
I'm gonna go home and make like a magenta pond just cause.
Oh, that's nice.
I don't know what it would be, but
Yeah. I wish I could do this stuff at home. I have pet birds, so I can't
Oh,
have
yep.
anything with fumes or they just die.
yeah, I'm lucky
Yeah.
enough to have my own room that is my dedicated studio room,
Nice.
and just nobody
I have
goes in
to-
there. That's my space.
Yeah, I have to like sneak out to the garage and then like make sure that it's windy enough that
So you guys can see I've added a touch of yellow, a little bit of turquoise, and I'm gonna like hold it on its side a little bit just to see, because when it's super thick, when you're looking at it super thick, you can't really get a good read of what the color is. You're gonna want to see it like on the side of the glass.
We
and
have
see
a-
how opaque it is.
We have a good safety question from the Dragon Pup. He's saying, even though he's in a well-ventilated area, should he still wear a respirator mask?
So here's the thing about respirators. Another common misconception that people get wrong a lot is a dust mask is not a respirator. I see a lot of people spray painting with those little white dust masks. That literally does you no good. It does not filter chemicals. I tend to, if I'm doing a lot of epoxy work, this is just a tiny amount, so I'm not going to do it here, and I have to talk. But yes, I wear a chemical respirator. It has those cartridges.
Okay.
It's made by there are a bunch of different brands. You can
They,
get it
they literally vacuum to your face, too,
They do,
right?
Yep.
yeah, and you have to get it.
Oh.
You want to make sure that you get a good fit test, which if anybody of you guys need here, I can do that for you.
Oh, cool.
But yes, I tend to wear a chemical respirator. But if it's just a small amount, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, be safe with this stuff. It's not good for you.
Yeah,
I
don't
mean,
go
if
stick
you're
in your-
making...
you don't need to test how bad it stinks. You can just keep your nose out of there, keep it away.
Right.
Yeah.
Tanner's calling us out, saying, "False, what's up, dude?"
What's false, Tanner?
So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just pour it in. I'm going to start on one end.
Oh.
It keeps the particulates out, not like chemical fumes or anything like that, but like dust. Like
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
particulate filter.
So I just saw the question about the cotton balls and the clouds.
Oh, I was gonna hang those questions for a little more towards the end.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
sorry,
just-
man.
we'll
You're
do
going to have to wait a little
Q&A.
bit.
That's- No worries.
All right, so I'm easing around the edge and trying to kind of let it do the work for me, right?
And do you mind to get... Oh, you are just going right on the gears. Never mind.
Now I am, but I'm kind
Yeah.
of trying to trickle in a little
Trickle
bit
it a little bit. Okay.
to let it seep in there. I'm seeing what it does for
So-
me, and I might even move it. I might pick it up and let it
What do you do if you get the resin in a spot you don't want it in? Just live with it?
live with it.
All right.
Be careful. If you really don't want something somewhere, you got to wall it off. take like some Vaseline and make a little styrene wall or something like that.
You could also probably use some masking tape, I'm assuming. Mask something off and then
It's the weight of it's gonna pull over the masking tape. I mean, I've done it before,
okay.
but it's not opportune. So I may have, in my rush, mixed a little bit too much ink in there, but it should be okay. So you can see we're getting this kind of nasty green color. Another trick I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take a little bit of ink. Let's see, what should we do? Let's take green ink. I'm gonna put some over here on the table. And I'm gonna take my little spatula. Dip it in here, and I'm gonna use some green ink, and I'm just gonna.
Oh, that's how you do that.
And then the resin will self-level
Drag it
out,
through.
right?
self-level
So
out, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh, that's super cool.
And so it's gonna be able to add. You can do this with yellow ink, and it'll add some really cool, weird ripples and bubbles and stuff.
And if the ink actually sits physically towards the top or bottom of the resin, does that give it any sort of three-dimensional quality?
It will give it
to
some depth. Yeah. Sometimes I'll do one layer, like in a pond. I'll do a layer of resin, let it cure, sprinkle some flock on it, and then pour another
nice.
layer so it's kind of got some suspended algae.
So if you wanted to do like reeds or something like that in there, would you just take like paintbrush bristles or something and just kind of
Super
like
easy.
stick them in there and just...
Super easy. What
Like
you
an
do
old
is
dry
you take
brush?
to do like pond cattails or something.
Yeah.
Or reeds. Yeah, you take like a brush like this, and I put a dab of hot glue down, and I literally stick this in there, and then I'll
Okay.
just snip it off the brush.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll just pour water effects around it. So now, here's my favorite trick, because wow, we only have like 9 minutes left. This is how you get bubbles out. And again,
oh no.
please
He's
be
got a
safe.
torch.
I am doing this on cardboard, so you have to be very careful to not start a fire. So we're gonna light this torch.
Everybody run.
Come on. Come on. There we go. Fire. And you actually wick the flame.
Oh, look
Whoa.
at that.
Look at that.
Whoa. That
Over
is
the
some
resin.
magic.
And that's it.
Oh.
That's literally it. It takes out all the bubbles.
Huh.
It's cheat code.
That's
Boom.
crazy.
My mind is just blown watching that.
Tony's
Yeah.
heart is literally, I can see it pounding, but he's very happy
As
about it
soon-
at the same time.
I knew this was happening, and even as you pulled it out, my eyes, like, I leaned up and looked across the room to make sure the fire extinguisher was still where I thought it was. I'd be like, okay, we're good. We're
You
good.
see, the funny thing
Whoa.
is, I swear I'm a trained professional. Like, as goofy as I am, I do try to be safe somewhat. And after this, now that the bubbles are clear, I'll actually try to nurse in a little bit more of this ink now that I can kind of see it a bit better. I'll try to skew some of that around. Yeah, there we go. And I mean, that's it. That's an acid pool. This stuff's gonna dry. Make sure you let it dry on a very level surface.
What is the cure time?
It depends on the resin, but this I leave it like overnight. Like I'm talking like 18 hours. It also depends on the heat, right? Like I said, if it's
Yup.
hot, it's gonna cure a bit faster. But here's the problem: give it a day, because if you accidentally like touch it with your finger and it's
Well,
not
but-
quite dry, it's gonna, even if it's like pretty dry, it's gonna pick up your fingerprint, and there's also nothing you can do. It's gonna have a fingerprint in it forever. So what I do is I actually take a bucket. And I put a bucket over my water effect
Oh, okay.
as it's curing, and I leave it there for a day. Now, the bucket, what it allows, since it's a chemical cure, it doesn't need air getting in there. It's going to cure anyway. But the bucket keeps dust from getting onto the
That's
surface.
smart.
It
That's
protects
smart.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Dorlane Clampett is asking if he wants to add the deliberate bubbles. Is there any reason that you would actually leave like the little foamy bubbles kicking around in there?
Yeah. I've done something where I wanted like a little bit of fizzing. a little bit of fizzing. I need a hypo. Sorry, I'm reading this question from you, Doria Clampett. So I plan to do 3D print, or to 3D print some objectives. Parts of some would be clearish resin. If I want to add bubbles, could I use a hypo needle? So it really, are you casting them in resin? If so, I'm not actually sure how to add bubbles. I would maybe put a bead on float a bead on the inside.
Oh, that would be
Yeah, floating a bead would be a good idea.
To fake that bubble on
Yeah,
the
if you're
interior
using
casting them.
if you're using like a needle to like inject a bubble in it, you would have to be really watching the time of it
That's the
because that
problem is-
bubble's going to rise up to the surface
And it's
every
gonna pop.
time, and
Yeah.
it'll either create a skin on the top or something, maybe.
You
but
can
you'd
catch
you'd have to
catch clear resin right when it's gelling. Sorry to interrupt you. There's
Yeah.
a resin that has it's a semi-clear and it has a like 10-minute cure. And you can catch it maybe when it's gelling and push
Yeah.
a bubble in there. I don't like to play the guessing game. I don't like to leave it up for chance. So if I have to do interior bubbles, I actually fake it with beads.
Yeah, or like you were saying earlier, using the googly eye or clear plastic gel cap blisters,
Exactly.
things like that.
I fake it.
Excuse me.
And if you don't have a torch, Richard E. Mitchell, buy one. They're really cheap. You can get those little creme brulee torches.
Oh yeah, sure.
Those work super well. You can get one on Amazon for like $7. They're tiny. They don't take up a lot of space, and they have a self-starter. You don't even need to use a lighter on it. Another trick, actually, and this is going to blow your mind, is it's a harder product to get, so that's why I showed the torch. Mold release will actually do
Yep.
the same thing.
Yep,
Mold
it
release
does.
will, what we use for silicone molds, it'll pop all the bubbles on clear resin. I just found that out the other day.
Yep.
It's pretty neat. Tony, do you want to show? Can we do P3 kitbashers?
Do you want? Yeah, we can do that now.
Yeah, let's
So
do that.
cool.
All right.
We got a really, really cool submission since we only have like 4 minutes left-ish. And I just want to show it off because it is so cool. You want to pull that up for me? So, Brother Chaplain Kaeg, forgive me if I am pronouncing Kaeg wrong, made this awesome Vinter modification.
Oh, wow.
And look at how cool that is.
Oh man,
It's got some beautiful green
that's
stuff sculpting.
amazing.
That filigree on the shoulder pads. I mean, this is the stuff we look for. And you can tell that he's using some really cool tricks with the putty. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it looks like you're mixing different types of putty together for your different effects. So it looks like you're doing an epoxy sculpt mixed with a green putty to kind of get more chiseled. Make it like we were talking about on your live stream. If you mix the brown putty together with some other putties, you can make it more chiselable. You can control the workability.
Yep,
And
you
so
can
it looks
play
like on
with
those armor plates where you can see that it's lighter, you're mixing in a different type of putty so that you can chisel that out. And it's just, there's some,
Oh.
exactly. So
Yeah,
it's
okay.
green stuff and milliput.
Oh, and look at the
together.
back.
I love
Wow.
the fur.
Look at that fur. Fur is so hard to sculpt. It's beautiful. That cape is stunning.
That whole thing is
Yeah.
just
I mean,
crazy
well
good.
done.
Gorgeous kit
Guys,
bash.
please give us more of this. This is awesome. I love showing this stuff.
I cannot wait to see this fully painted and like
Oh, we need like
based and everything. Like
Yeah, so
this
when
is
you
gonna
paint
look
it-
so good.
When you
Can we get
paint
some
it,
claps in the chat?
when you paint it, be sure to hashtag it. Hashtag P3 Painters. And
Yep.
I bet they'll share it on Get Your Paint On.
I may know a guy who can make that happen.
Right? Yeah. Who would have thunk? It's so awesome.
Very cool.
But
Very cool.
do we have any other questions we want to go over, Tony?
No, that's. Let's see. Actually, there was one. We did have one other question. So yeah, so we're right about the end of the show. So Danny, if you're done, if the chat has any questions for you, anything they want to ask, now is a really great time. But there's another question here from Alec Luda about doing clouds.
I hate clouds.
I had
Clouds so much.
I have a friend who what they did was they took a bit of wool and kind of spray painted it a little bit darker so it looks like smoke, and then
Yeah.
they got one of those little LED candles.
Yeah.
And they stuck it on the bottom. And so it made this really cool little smoke template that kind of flashes and looks sweet.
No, that's a nice way to do that. I mean, cotton balls work pretty well, and I like them because they're in ball form. So you can, I'll actually, a lot of the time I'll create like a mass like out of like white foam, like bead foam, and I'll
Oh,
start
okay.
to, I'll hit it with spray glue because spray glue won't actually melt the bead foam, and I'll actually start to place the cotton balls on it. Now, I tend to hit it with a clear coat after, so I'll use like a sprayable like crystal clear just to like firm it up, make it a little bit more crunchy and durable. That tends to be a way I do it. For our markers for tournaments, for our like fog markers, I actually sculpted them out of Sculpey, like a swirling kind of marker, and then I cast it in, or actually I hand them all to Brian and he casts it. Give credit where credit's due. Brian cast it in a clear resin for me, and the reason why we do that is this stuff has to ship all over the country to our tournaments, and so I need something durable.
A little more robust.
Exactly. If I put a cotton ball, solution there, it's just going to get crunched, and we want people to be able to walk onto that template like we were talking about, the little pie template, and they need to be able to remove it. So if a million people are touching this thing, it's going to just crunch. But yeah, no, I mean, I like sculpting. Sculpting's cool. It depends on the style that you're looking for. But no, cotton balls are probably the easiest and best way to go, honestly.
Stuffed animal stuffing. That?
Yeah, the polyfill.
That
That stuff's
probably-
nice. Kind of has a little bit
that
of a
probably
shine
works
to it, so I like that for some things. Dragon Pup is asking how forgiving is the resin if it's not exactly a 1-to-1 ratio. I mean, you can mix it by eye, and it will, it will be forgiving enough.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
But try to get it really darn close, because you just don't want to risk it.
You basically just taking your chances if it's not 1-to-1.
Exactly.
And the smaller the batches, the more accurate you have to be.
Yes. If I'm doing a really small batch, I weigh it.
Yep.
I do it by weight. I have one of those little shipping scales that you get from like an office supply store. And if I'm doing a tiny, tiny batch, I measure it by ounces.
If I've been doing, like, some of the ones that I've tried have been not 1-to-1 ratios, and I've been known to, like, get out the pipette and, like, count drop by drop.
Exactly.
And
another good technique, if you're doing a tiny, sorry to keep going on tangents, but if you're doing tiny resin pours, those monoject syringes that you use when you have, like, dental surgery, you can get them at most drugstores. They have little marker lines, so I'll actually keep a part A and part B capped with resin. And I'll just squeeze out. You can count the lines that it goes down. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll go like 3 lines down, 3 lines down.
Do you call out, like, I need 15 cc's of part
Every
A?
time. Every time. I need 50 cc's of insulin, stat, right?
Don't
If you didn't call that out, I would be like, what have you done with Danny?
Danny comes out and he's just stuck in a pose. He's like,
I've been watching too much Dandalorian. So I just like make myself in carbonite or whatever it's called. It's awesome. Anyway, here we are. Thank you guys for coming for another Hobby Hangout. Thanks for joining us. We will see you again next Friday. We have some special stuff planned. Hair dryers do not work to get bubbles out. It doesn't get hot enough. Again, thank you guys for joining. Be sure to go on and look at our Black Friday sale again. Again, it's the last day. And these ponds are available. The water features are available on our online store. Currently, we only have 30. Actually, technically, I know we have 29.
Yep.
So they're going to go real quick. You get 2 of them for $15. Be sure to go pick some up. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, shoot us an email.
Absolutely.
It was up earlier in the stream there. We'd love to hear from you guys and answer your questions.
See you guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.